Hi everyone, I'm going to try and analyse some of the scenes in a series of videos. We're going to analyse some scenes for Frances Ha. I thought to put these videos together because we haven't had much time to analyse the film itself in class, and I realise it's probably the more complex of the two films in terms of an analytical point of view. So what I'm going to do with this video is just run through the question very quickly. I'm going to lay out a potential or two potential preferred readings of the film that you can use as the basis of your analysis, and then I'm going to basically do an audio commentary over the first 5 minutes of the film, and that'll give you some talking points and some ideas hopefully to build upon. Okay, so the question asks, explore how far the spectator responds in the same way to a film. Illustrate your answer by close reference to your chosen film. So I'm not going to dwell on these points because I've gone over them in the previous PowerPoints, but if you want to have a look at them, feel free to pause. The key words here are how far. So the question is asking for a variety of responses, and that's also indicated by spectators, not spectator, and the same way. You should instantly recognise the spectators do not respond in the same way. And as I said earlier, I think this is a little bit of a trick question, but what you want to be doing is talking about how each film basically generates three potential responses, and you're going to explore them in your essay. So here's a sample opening statements that you can feel free to borrow and put into your essay. Okay, so we'll leave that on screen for a second. Feel free to pause it, but I'm going to move on. Okay, so the preferred reading of Frances Ha, there are many ways you can approach this, so I've gone for two of the most obvious really. So I'm just going to read through this, and then you can pick either, I think, like a feminist reading of the film, and that'll enable you to double this answer up with your ideological critique rather, or you can take a different view about meaning. Okay, so I'd say the preferred reading is for Frances Ha is this: that femininity is clearly the focus of the film, along with the concept of the young adult, or what we now know as the millennial. The film is very aware of the criticisms of the fecklessness of post-college generation, which have tended to focus on this sense of entitlement. So we see like the effect of that now, don't we, in 2020 and the subsequent years since the film was made. If you go online, I'm talking about a very significant small minority, but those people who seem to shout the loudest is that there is a general sense of entitlement coming from young people, and it ties into this so-called snowflake generation and stuff like that. So the film is sort of dealing with that, but in 2012. Some of the issues faced by millennials, for example, is the breakdown of traditional family structures. You hear older generations or the so-called boomers say things. Well, I don't know if you do, but they do say things like this all the time. When I was a kid, I could leave a job on a Friday and I can get a new one on a Monday. They're talking about that world really, and you, me, millennials, people who've grown up post-boomer generation, we basically face a different set of challenges than they did. And I think a lot of the snowflake generation stuff comes from older generations. They can't empathise with younger people because they're facing different problems, and obviously the older generations see different as being less than, maybe. So you say, we had rations and we had all this stuff. Like, that may be well and true, but you didn't grow up on the internet and all the horrors that brings. So the film is trying to redress the balance a little bit. So some of the issues faced by millennials is the breakdown of the family, as I've said, so other things as well, such as marriage and family. And again, Frances's parents support her emotionally, but they can't financially support her, and that's a big point. And that may be an interesting scene to look at. So instead, Frances learns how to be a self-reliant person while still maintaining her sense of individuality. And that is something that we're going to these issues I'm going to talk about generally through the analysis of the scenes. Okay, so I'm going to play the opening scene without sound and I'll just talk over it. But please bear in mind this is a stream of consciousness. I haven't planned this, I'm just going to talk. And hopefully I can fit it all in. But you can obviously watch the video, rewind it, and make a note on the key points. Alright, so here we go, if we can get it working. Alright. Okay, so we've got our logo. This is an independent film logo, and again, I've already said, but the fact that the film is shot in black and white should already position the audience to take a different response to the film. So the film opens with a shot of two women, and what's interesting here is that, you know, it's an independent film which challenges expectation. So we have female characters, but also they're acting quite in a traditionally masculine way. They're fighting, and that is going to be something that we can talk about. And here we go, is our quirky millennials, very different. And the idea is that we, you know, see them as non-conformists. They're doing what they want. And over the course of the film, that is, for Sophie at least, broken down, but for Frances, it's sort of resisted a bit. So we get the development of their relationship, and we realise the film is going to be centred on a female platonic relationship. Very unusual in mainstream cinema. So again, it's challenging traditional approaches and ideological approaches to American cinema. I think this shot is great. It shows the complete difference and juxtaposition between the two. One's exercising, etc. And you know, you have these two characters hanging out the window, the talking, the smoking, again, quite non-traditional female roles. Characters clearly very dependent on each other, and there's a line in the film actually where Frances describes their relationship with Sophie. Said that basically, I think the quote is, "They are lesbians who don't make love," or something like that. And it's showing and really reinforcing the power of female friendship and female relationships, and it's consciously rejecting that notion of sexualization and turning it into something that the male viewer can take pleasure in. And if it seems strange and unusual, maybe that's simply because we haven't been exposed to it before. There we go, our logo. I think this scene is interesting because, you know, mainstream films generally build towards a romantic climax. Think of La La Land, you know, they get together, they all live happily ever after. That's the general approach, but in this film, Baumbach starts the film with the breakup of a traditional romantic relationship, and Frances then leaves the partner to pursue a relationship with a friend. So there's quite a lot going on there. Maybe we can read something about entitlement into the boyfriend. He just makes changes to his life and just assumes Frances is going to go along with that as well. And I don't know about you, but I'm more aligned with Frances at this point already. The boyfriend's a bit overbearing, a bit, I don't know, maybe rub you the wrong way.
No, I thought maybe.
And what's interesting about this scene is that we've probably seen many times in many films where female characters may feel coerced, or they may move in with the boyfriend basically and split up with Sophie because they want to appeal to and appease the man in her life. Where it's interesting that Frances rejects that, and that for many audiences, that rejection of norms and convention and status quo is actually quite appealing. And combine that with quirky nature. These are all things that are designed to make us, you know, so-called identify with Frances before we can align with her.
I want to move in with you.
Okay.
I feel bad.
Don't feel bad. Forget it.
No. What?
Nothing.
You're mad.
I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
I feel bad.
Stop feeling bad. Frances, I asked you to move in with me. You said no.
But I can't.
You can. You don't want to. Who is it?
It's okay. I don't have to get it.
Who is it?
It's Sophie. I'll just call her back later.
Just pick up the phone.
Are you sure?
Answer it.
Yo, girl, what's up? Hey, where are you?
We've just got Gerwig's performance as well. She's clearly a bit uncomfortable, and as I said in the other video, to tie into the feminist reading of the film, is that she is a bit uncomfortable by it, but she's not willing to compromise her relationship with Sophie to, you know, appeal to or appease the male character. And that's something that's quite unusual, and again, that just goes against mainstream convention, is that she's not willing to compromise a female relationship in favour of a relationship with a man. And then we get the high shot, you know, the low angle shot of the male character, and this shot of Frances. She just looks totally isolated and lonely and awkward, and I think that, you know, that he looks a little bit, I don't know what word you want to use, not intimidating, but he looks like he's in control a little bit, and she looks like a naughty child. And, you know, it's up to you how you respond to this, but, you know, she's been asked to move in, and you just gave a reason and said no, and she's sort of made to feel awkward about it. So the idea is that you connect with her emotionally, not the boyfriend.
I am going to get the cats anyway.
But then you're going to be a single guy with 2 cats.
Why would I be single?
With 2 cats.
No, I know. I mean, why would I be single?
I don't know. thought you said.
But again, it's about aligning with the character, seeing their living the world through their eyes, etc. Imagine if you'd split up with someone and they said something like that. It's quite a passive aggressive thing to say, really. You know, the connotation being, well, whatever, I'll just move on to the next woman.
This hasn't been
You know.
for a while.
This hasn't been great for a while. This has not been.
Where are you going?
Home, I guess. I'm really tired. I'm always so tired.
And going back to the point about millennials, we have a moment where Frances is uncertain. She hasn't got a plan. She looks from the outside to be very, you know, a bit of an airhead, not sure where she's going. And that's always a criticism of millennials. So Baumbach is establishing that straight away, is that she conforms pretty much to that expectation. But throughout the film, we see that chipped away, and we see like that sort of stereotypical millennial actually be humanised a little bit. And maybe the audience member has a different appreciation of the struggles of young people in the modern world. Alright, so here's some more scenes that you might want to look at. I will do videos on other scenes from Frances Ha, but there's a few scenes you may want to look at. And I think these scenes will give you talking points for both a feminist or a millennial sort of reading of the film. Now remember, it's 40 marks for the question, but it's over 2 films, so you need 20 marks, so you need 3 solid bits of analysis, basically. And think about it like that, 5 marks for each. 5 marks for your intro and conclusion combined, and you can use that to show your understanding of theory and the question, and then 3 paragraphs of very concise analysis. Opening sequence for recognition, a second sequence for alignment, and a third scene for allegiance. Or if you take a different response, find a scene that you feel maybe broke your allegiance or alignment with Frances Ha and explain why your response is different from the preferred response. Okay, and there's a few more just talking points, maybe get you thinking, technical aspects, and also aspects about the characters and how they're shot and things like that. So maybe a few ideas to get you started. Okay, there you go. There's the question with a few bits of guidance really, and a task for you to complete, which we will talk about tomorrow, which is Friday the 20th, I think. I'll see you then.